Martin from the Philippines. We're here in Real Talk Lifeline. So, in this quick live tonight, this one is called How to Win an Argument with Your Mother. Now, quick disclaimer, this Real Talk Lifeline is for people who are looking for real, raw, and authentic conversations. So, if you want to have the hard conversations, keep listening. Now, if you're not into that, you're not ready for it, maybe you don't feel mature enough yet at that point, then you can stop right now. So if you are ready, let's move forward. So, what is this about? This is a sharing of an actual experience with my mom the other night, and I got triggered. I had an emotional meltdown, and it was messy, ugly, and painful. But there was a good ending. So, this is the reason why I'm sharing this live with you right now. So it's not easy, especially when I was going through it. And what I'll be sharing, the intention is to learn and to become a better person from the experience. So, what happened also, the timing right after that happened, it was me and my mom alone in the car after she had a medical checkup. So, it doesn't happen often, but out of the blue, suddenly we had an argument and it went really bad. And I got affected deeply. So before I share what happened over there, after that incident, a close friend of mine who I trust, he's actually my ice bath teacher. And a quick plug here because I went through the teacher training last September 2024 with him. And the methodology actually ties in with this. It will help you handle a situation like this, whether it's an argument with your mother, a woman, maybe it's your wife, could be even your father or another person in your life, case to case basis. So apply the lesson if it's useful. If it's not, then feel free to find something else that works for you. So, what happened was that friend of mine shared an Instagram, an IG reel, so it's a short video, and then the title or the thumbnail caption was Should Men Argue with Women? So a lot of you watching the live or the replay, you could comment already, like if you have experience, especially. So, why should men never argue with women? So, this is the quick answer. So, men argue with logic, and then women argue with feelings. So, I'll demonstrate that using a story, which is my actual experience with my mother. So that night, before I even got that message from my friend, it aligned. Very random. My mom and I were talking about a certain topic. It's, let's say, a milliard real estate tax. And then I started talking about something. So I was in my own perspective and I was trying to share something which was important to me. Now, my mom was in her own lane, her own thinking. And to be fair, she understood something totally different. Oh, I already paid it. I already paid the real property tax, the milliar. And I was talking about a totally different property. So what happened, just to keep it very quick and to the point, was my mom suddenly said this to me, and I'll try to say it in a way that gets the point across. And it's hard because I'm gonna have to relive the moment. So while we were talking and got into an argument, so you imagine this, you and your mother, she suddenly said, snapped at me and she said, Marunong ka ba sa akin? So here in the Philippines, like it's like when your mom tries to correct you or, you know, berates you. So even without the translation in English, you would Google translate that marunong ka ba sa akin? Super out of context, what made things worse was she was even in the wrong. So I don't mind being corrected, even if it's harsh. So just make sure you're right because I can learn from you. right? So what happened was I got triggered. It felt very ugly, painful. It felt the tone, the way she was treating me was like very unkind and condescending. So I kept repeating it back at her. And then I don't know, but like I had the space, or like maybe the Holy Spirit, if you believe in that, came down and helped me. I started communicating and saying, "Why are you speaking to me this way?" in a very unkind, condescending way. And it felt so ugly because even those words, as you hear and see me, English is my first language, it felt like that was the first time I ever heard those words spoken to me that way. And then I just started repeating it back at her. And it was very ugly. So I had space to suddenly say, "Why are you treating me this way? Unkindly, condescending." And then get this out of my mouth, get this out of my head. Don't treat me this way, like that. And to keep the long story short, something shifted. So again, I was going through that emotional roller coaster. And in that turning point, my mom suddenly said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." So it from that moment on it shifted. And somehow I also just repeated back, "I'm sorry too." So again, it was highly emotional. For those who understand, who've ever been in an argument with your mother, maybe that's like the most, right? The deepest that hits home. It could be with your wife, it could be with, for some of you, it could be your father or someone else close to you in your life. So, whenever an argument happens, the lesson I learned here is men usually argue with logic. Now, that could be true for some of you women as well. But other people, women, maybe some men too out there, they argue with their feelings. So it was only the time when the feelings shifted. I wasn't using logic, I was just repeating actually. And then there was like a turning point. That's the time, maybe the first time or one of the very few times I've ever heard my mom say sorry at me. So growing up, I rarely heard that. There was a time, maybe more than 5 years ago, half a decade, my nephew and niece, they're twins, are 10 years old now. So my ate, my older sister, when her kids were nearby, maybe 3 or 4 years old, very young, I overheard my sister, my older sister, say, "I'm sorry, mommy was wrong." So I rarely heard that growing up. So that hit me. So this moment with my mom now, as a 38-year-old guy, and my mom's like in her 70s, super recent, just 2 nights ago. This is the way I was able to win the argument. So winning is not necessarily being like I'm better than you. That's not the point of this live or this lesson, the sharing. It was more of a shift in feelings. So what was very hard was I did feel and go through the emotions like a mirror, what my mom was projecting or unloading onto me. And it felt very painful. It felt very ugly. It felt very messy. So why did I mention my ice bath teacher earlier? Ironically, was the guy who shared that reel with me, that lesson. When you go through training like this, so for some of you it's yoga, pranayama. This one was cold immersion therapy. So facilitator masterclass. When you go through an ice bath, very cold water, what I learned was physically, and then in the case of the argument with my mother, that was emotionally. For some of you, it could even be mentally or psychologically. When you have the capacity or the ability to take it, then that's the time that you can shift it later on. So it almost ended in a disaster because it was like trauma being passed down onto me, meaning the ugly, unkind, condescending way my mom was uh, speaking to me out of the blue suddenly was I was repeating it back at her. And many people, if they're not aware, they can just keep repeating that, perpetuating, meaning I might treat my own future kids that way. I might treat other people that way. I might treat my colleagues, a helper, any person that way if I'm not careful. And then it shifted. So that's very powerful. So the way that you win it is through the feelings. So the ability to have that emotional alchemy or maturity. I did have a workshop actually called Emotional Alchemy when I graduated from this training. So all that means is how you turn a negative into a positive, how you turn an argument into an amicable, you know, event, meaning you become a better person. Maybe you learn patience, you learn forgiveness. One of the things that helped me in that micro second moment, how it shifted was when I was feeling it and then repeating it back at my mom, I suddenly started to feel maybe my mom, like who who talked to my mom, my mother this way, right? Someone must have been very unkind, condescending, and said this to her for her to ever say this to me. And she didn't say that before. Like it was new to me. So she must have maybe learned it somewhere. Maybe my grandma, maybe her my grandpa treated her that way. So the anger suddenly turned into sorrow, and then it turned into understanding. So that's how you win an argument. So just to recap it again, should men argue with women? Like should you argue with your mother? It's a trap. So the short answer is no, like you'll never win it. The long answer is this. Why shouldn't you argue with women or another person that way? And I'm curious, people watching the live or the replay, you could comment down below. Maybe you have another way that works really well. So, why? Because men, we usually argue with logic. And I was doing that, admittedly. I see that a lot with my dad. So, it usually ends up in frustration because women, they usually argue with feelings. So, the challenge of getting a win-win there is to be able to have emotional maturity or capacity to take the feelings, especially when it's hard feelings, heavy feelings, painful feelings, not just anger, which is the most common. It could be someone someone's loved one just passed away. Maybe they lost someone. So in Real Talk Lifeline, I opened up about my depression. So a lot of people will shy away from that. They can't take it. Now, if you can, then you can meet them where they're at and turn that like magic into something good. So the logic comes later. And then again, that was the very few times that I ever heard my mom say sorry to me. And it was beautiful. So again, very painful experience, but it ended up very good. So I just wanted to share that with you. If you're curious, there's an upcoming teacher training. If you're into that, alternative modalities or methods, if you're into yoga, pranayama, you love that stuff, you're gonna love this teacher training I took last September 2024. There's a batch upcoming. Uh, I went through it. So again, while it's available, you could take it for those who are serious. I did it more for the ice bath, the cold immersion therapy training. I love that. I love practical tools and methods. So, again, an argument with your mother is kind of like an emotional ice bath. That's how I relate it. Maybe that's how I got through it too. And then, even having a conversation like this is also something like that. It's not comfortable, it's hard, have the hard conversation, but you can turn that into something good. So, last thing is if you want to learn more, check out the Real Talk Lifeline YouTube channel. So youtube.com/at Real Talk Lifeline. There are more videos that could help you there. Like, subscribe. If you feel that this video helped you, share it with someone, and you might even find other more helpful topics and videos in there. So thank you. I love you, and I will see you next time.